Hello, learners. I hope you are all doing well. And today I am going to discuss Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart. So, Things Fall Apart is one of the very important and significant text written by the African writer, post-colonial writer Chinua Achebe. It was published in the year 1958 in a total of 5 novels that have been written by Chinua Achebe. Things Fall Apart is the first one. He then wrote No Longer at Ease. But what is very important about Things Fall Apart is that this was a text, a literary text, which we can say that the empire was writing back. So, this particular text has several of distinct features which make us understand how this becomes a part of the post-colonial literature that was writing back to the empire. So, Things Fall Apart derives its strength from a number of specific features which make it an ideal text. So, Achebe's own sensitive perception of an ancient society which was at the crossroads of history, his artful mastery of telling a complex story in a very simple manner but effectively blending with the techniques of oral narration with written discourse. This particular novel, as I told you, is one of his magnum opus which occupies a very pivotal place in African literature. And it has been translated into many languages. It is because of some kind of universal elements which belong to this particular novel that it has been translated into so many languages. So, otherwise, if we see in the trilogy, we have No Longer at Ease, which was published in 1960. We have Arrow of God, published in 1964. Achebe's later novels included A Man of the People, published in 1966, and Ant Hills of the Savannah, which was published in 1987. So there was a lot of gap between the publication of his fourth novel and the fifth novel. In addition to these 5 novels, he has also written some short stories, many essays, prose pieces, which give us so much about the writing processes and why was Achebe writing for a particular community. Beginning with the distinct features of Things Fall Apart, very broadly, you should know that the text is marked by simplicity, universality, and a very nice style of narration. Though Things Fall Apart appears to be a very simple tale which presents the rise and fall of an obstinate man, the protagonist Okonwa, but it also simultaneously, in parallel, is presenting the story of a society that Achebe was a part of. So, Okono's insistence on participating in killing of Ikimeha, whom he had treated like his own son for a number of years, is an example of Okono's obstinacy. So, Okono was very impatient with those people who were physically weak. A very typical example of Okono's short temper is his beating of his wife during the week of peace which the people of Umofia observed before sowing season of yam. So, Umofia is the place in which the plot or the story is constructed. So, this Umofia is not simply a village. Now, how did this word Umofia come up? Umofia, again, was the title of these tribes, the African tribes, and that's how this village derives its name from the title of that tribe. Apparently, the novel, does not reveal any kind of complexity by way of either depth of character or the portrayal of the plot construction. But these virtues have been considered quite essential for any novel of significance and have been eulogized by many Western critics as novel, an art form, and these critics range from Henry James to E.M. Forster, who have eulogized this very simple style of writing where there is neither a depth of character nor a depth of the plot. So the character of Okonkwo is portrayed with the help of a few incidents that happen, like winning a wrestling match, killing of Ikemenfuo, I told you, who was his adopted son, beating of one of his wives. You already know, you have read the story that it was a time when they had multiple wives, killing his friend Oberika's son accidentally, and his beheading of the white man's messenger. There is no particular attempt by Achebe to go deep down into the psyche of Okonkwo to find out whether there are any kind of hesitations, dilemmas, hopes, fears, regrets, and elations about any of the acts that he undertakes. So, no psychological dimension of this character has been given to us. Even the other characters besides the protagonist are very simple, peripheral, and they have not been provided with any of the major roles in the events and happenings taking place in the plot. So primarily, Things Fall Apart is told in a very simple structure and in a very lucid style and with using minimum words. Things Fall Apart is not the story of rise and fall of a single man, the protagonist, but it in fact is the story of the whole clan, whole society, the whole way of life which met its tragic end at the crossroads of history. The Aibo Society. This is the society that Achebe talks about in this novel. The Aibo Society, on the eve of the colonial takeover, is the real hero of Achebe's Things Fall Apart. A number of incidents which have no direct bearing on Okonkwo's character have a significance from the point of view in which the society or Aibo Society of Umofia has been presented. So the complex society that the pre-European Aibo word is presented in awe-inspiring glory through details of various customs and rituals, its daily chores, travails, jubilations, mournings and celebrations. So you will see, you have already read the novel, you know that the whole novel is replete with the customs, rituals, the mournings and celebrations of the Aibo community. The very first chapter is about the society, its norms, respecting those who have physical strength and pitting those who had none. So, a lot of importance was attached to the physical might. So, anyone who was weak was looked down upon. And anyone, who was having this kind of a physical strength was considered to be one of the best citizens or best villager of Umuofia. There is a contrast between Okonoa and his father Onoko, and these have very subtly been presented by Chinua Achebe. While the father Onoko is lazy and physically weak, the son Okono is strong both physically and mentally. The mental strength of Okonoa is brought to light through an incident in which death of a woman of Umuofia takes place at the hands of the residents of Baino, and as they demand for a virgin and a young boy as a compensation for killing, which has been described in detail in the second chapter. So such incidents highlight another aspect of the Ibo society. What is it? Tit for tat, eye for an eye, yes, blood for blood. So this presents the prevailing justice system in the society also. It highlights the plight of ordinary people who were in total control of their leaders. Ikemefuna had to pay his life for a crime in which he was not at all involved. So you see that the ordinary people hardly had any kind of, say, independence or autonomy, and also that the prevailing justice systems were not very good and favorable for a normal citizen. Achebe in detail describes the manner in which justice was publicly dispensed. He makes use of the ego mass, fertility gods, how they were propitiated by observance of a peace week before the sowing season. And what was being sown? Yams. And how a man had to pay a very heavy price even for accidentally having killed someone. So Achebe gives us enough evidence of various customs, rituals connected to both marriage and death. So he presents before us a very vivid picture of the Ibo society. Achebe, unlike many of the writers, did not believe that writing was an enterprise for entertainment. In one of his essays, Novelist as Teacher, which is a part of the book Morning Yet on Creation Day, he says that the primary purpose of his novels is to educate his readers about the glory of their past, the pre-colonial life. And whatever he is writing, he says he does so with the intention of correcting the distortions which were deliberately introduced by the Europeans into the history and culture of Africa in order to create a kind of inferiority complex in the minds of Africans. We are all very well aware of the fact, I think I have already explained in two of my lectures on post-colonial writings, that how the Europeans, the Eurocentric notion, tried to create binaries, and they tried to show the natives and the colonized in a very bad light. They tried to show them as savages, uncivilized, undeveloped, and inferior, right? So Achebe says that he was writing back to the empire to remove those kind of distortions which the empire, the European writers, the Eurocentric discourses had created, which stated the Africans to be of inferior race. So it is with this aim in his mind that he went on repeating the statement that Africa had no culture, no history, no past. So they justified that their colonization of Africa by stating that what were the Europeans saying? That they had come there to civilize the Africans. So the frequently used expressions of white man's burden for black Africa shows that the same frame of mind, tried to construct the superiority of the white man, and also they tried to project themselves as very philanthropic in spirit, that they actually were trying to do some very good deed to those who were inferior, or they took it as a white man's burden to polish them, to civilize them. So obviously this was a strategy to perpetuate their hold over the minds of the colonized people. So in this respect, Things Fall Apart is a text about a specific society, the Ibo people I told you, with a specific aim of restoring their self-confidence, restoring them their glory. So at another level, we can say that Things Fall Apart is also the story of individuals, societies which grow rigid in their outlook with the passage of time and refuse to recognize the changes in their circumstances. What to say about adapting, right? So Okonoa and the Ibo society of the late 19th century are not only, the concerns of Achebe in his writings, as in Things Fall Apart, but he is also equally concerned about the human predicament and the universal character that gives, a universal dimension to Achebe's writing. So it is not that Achebe is unaware of this dimension of his novel, but there certainly is a universal element to it, which is bringing out whatever is true for the Ibo society is equally true for the ancient Chinese, Indians, Greeks, and Egyptian civilizations. So, in presenting the Ibo society of Eumorphia in Things Fall Apart, Achebe is trying to give a glimpse into the universality of the human predicament. So, Achebe has particularly taken up the title of the novel from W.B. Yeats's very popular poem, The Second Coming, which is about the cyclic movement of human history in terms of anarchy and order. Besides presenting the ordinary life, customs, rituals of the Ibos and the Eumorphian village, and the universal elements about the human predicament, Achebe also portrays the human man-women relationship in the Ibo society, and he does so primarily through Okonoa and his three wives. In the very beginning of the novel, we are told that Okonoa is ruling his household with a heavy hand. His wives, especially the youngest, lived in perpetual fear of his fiery temper, and so did the little children. So this shows how it was a patriarchal order, and man was controlling the household. So Okonoa befits Neoa's mother, and this is a quotation from the novel. "Do what you are told, woman," he thundered and stammered, and so Noa's mother took Kimifina to her hut and asked no more questions. So men had that kind of an intimidating relationship. They could create fear in the women, right? Things Fall Apart also makes use of the folk material. Ibos were renowned for their extensive use of proverbs and metaphors in communication. So, in fact, communication had been very fine tuned to be an art, and there used to be contest to choose an outstanding communicator. So, in fact, the art of conversation itself is described with the help of the following proverb. Proverbs are the palm oil with which words are eaten. So the whole novel has many proverbs which are used to describe the person's interaction and relation with others, focusing especially on his or her status in the society. And for instance, he says, a child washed with his hands, he could eat with kings, meaning thereby that one could raise one's social status by one's behavior. In addition to this, you also have, many other proverbs that were potentially used for various situations. So, Okonowa is shown as one such person, and another proverb that fits him is, a man who pays respect to the great paves the way for his greatness. Okonowa's potential is recognized by his fellow villagers because you can tell a ripe corn by its look. While his father could not raise a loan because lending him was like pouring grains of corn into a bag of coals, Okonowa had no such difficulty when he went to borrow yams for planting. So, when showing the temper, again, we have some kind of metaphors and comparisons with palm kernels. And in another situation, when Okonowa is being dissuaded from participating in the killing of Ikimenfua, especially because he called him father, there are some words, and proverbs which are used. A few are before you on the slide. A child cannot pay for its mother's milk. Let the kite perch and let the eagle perch. If one says no to the other, let his wing break. An animal rubs its aching fink against a tree. A man asks his kinsman to scratch it. A toad does not run in the daytime for nothing. So, be prepared for such questions. You could get some proverb, and if you have read the whole novel properly, you will be able to explain that particular proverb. Iniki the bird says that since men have learned to shoot without missing, he has learned softly without perching. I have learnt that a man who makes troubles for others is also making trouble for himself, said the tortoise. The clan is like a lizard. If it lost its tail, it soon grew another. So I hope you will be able to understand these particular proverbs, and you will go through the text in order to, acquaint yourself with these proverbs, what they mean. So I would like to conclude this lecture by summing up what we have learned today. Today, we have talked about and learnt about a few very distinct characteristics in the writing, this particular writing novel, Things Fall Apart, written by Chinua Achebe. So, the plot is simple, the characters are not very deep, no psychological dimensions have been provided, but still, there is a universal appeal. The story of Things Fall Apart is not a story of an individual, it is the story of a society, the Aibo society, their customs, rituals, how their images were distorted by the colonizers, and how they are trying to assert, Achebe is trying to assert all this through the narratives, presenting their folk tales, their ways of communicating, and hence talking about a universal predicament, human predicament. So, do go through the text, and if you have any questions, we can take up in the next. next class. Thank you.